6 and 7, we walked through it. One of the process when you do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus, right? It's an acknowledgement instead of holding on to fear. The passage encourages bringing your specific struggles directly to God. Maintaining gratitude, presenting requests with thanksgiving helps refocus the mind on God's track record of faithfulness rather than the current problem. We kind of got through those two last week. And then receiving the promise, kind of when you go back to it over here, it's in the peace of God, and that is the promise, right? The result is a supernatural peace that's a weird word, but supernatural peace that guards the heart against panic and the mind against spiraling thoughts. So when you think about this, because we talked through prayer, petition, thanksgiving, presenting your request to God. I'm sorry, I probably should get another TV screen over there. But it says, and the peace of God. How would you describe the peace of God? If you were to describe how that might feel, how might you describe that?
Probably not having any real worries.
Calm in the storm. No anxiety. What else? How else might you describe the peace of God?
Quietness of your soul.
Quietness of your soul. Could you expound on that just a little bit?
It's the quietness of your mind,
Mm-hmm.
that your worries, your anxieties, you just feel the calm.
Mm-hmm. Anybody have roving thoughts, circular thoughts, right? You know, and when you think about it, circular thinking in a concept kind of like this, right? You have the thought and then all the different reactions to it, and then recovery over here in a context it is. Our minds do this. Anybody else's mind do that? Right? How many of you lay down at night and your mind decides that is the perfect time to relive all of the failures of every bit of your existence? Anybody else? Am I the only one that happens? You sit in that thing, okay, not just today's mess ups, but when I was 8 years old, I did this thing. When I was 7 years old, I started a candy bar, a Kit Kat actually, from a convenience store. Right? My brother turned me in because he's a snitch. Snitches get ditches, ends up with snitches. Anyway, but I got that all backwards, but it's all right. Right? But every now and then your brain just relives these things, right? It goes through, not sometimes, it seems like all the time, but when you take it before God, right? You take everything, you by prayer and petition before God with thanksgiving, giving the peace, right? Have you ever experienced that where you start to have this emotional reaction to it, or this physical, right? Where your heart, you start having all those physical signs of it. Heart rate increases, breathing increases. You ever get lightheaded, your head starts hurting, all those kind of things. You get jittery and twitchy, right? You start having all of these different responses to it before you get to here. What happens if, when the thought comes up, you pray about it? Has anybody ever had that come to an end?
I think, to expound on what she said,
Yes.
It's more of a communication with God.
Uh-huh.
He communes with me, I commune with him, and throughout that communication, there is a peace that comes, that I can tell him everything. I can throw everything on him, you know.
Paul called it contentment in whatever stage of life or wherever he was content. And he said he had become all things to all people, and what was put in front of him, he ate it.
Not kind of like mine. Whatever you put in front of me, I will.
Did y'all hear what Susan just said? It's just like me. Whatever you put in front of me, anyway. So I'm on a seafood diet.
Well,
And
yeah,
seafood,
you
I
can
eat
look
food,
at me and
right?
tell I'm on a secret.
Nobody said that. Anyway, right? So the peace of God is a communion with God. It's an contentment with God. It's what? How did you guys put it? Calm in the storm, right?
You hope there's one of those in every family.
What?
Somebody that's calm and
Oh,
strong.
yeah. Well, I'm still looking for that person in mind.
It's interesting this week. I saw a blurb
guy was reporting on various studies that come out recently
Mm-hmm.
about how one thing they're finding with elderly that retain memory better and also longevity both
Mm-hmm.
was prayer was a consistent part of their lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And one of this particular guy's analogy was, even if they're lonely or if they're by themselves, prayer is giving them connection to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And that they're finding that's also part of it is
Mm-hmm.
having somebody to talk with and be with, and prayer fulfills that need.
Mm-hmm.
And again, coming back to the comfort, peace,
Mm-hmm.
that it becomes a more meditation, and it's hard to describe the peace that is within our heart. And you see some people have it a lot more, and it's beyond we almost don't have a good description for peace in the soul.
Mm-hmm.
That's where shalom somewhat comes in. We have taken peace and moved it from lack of war, lack of conflict, lack of something, instead of realizing it is something.
Well, we think of peace in a very, very tactile sense, right? Something we can touch, something we can feel, something that is happening around it. Whereas the peace Paul is talking about is internal peace. It's a calmness, it's a communion, it's a relaxing of the soul. Different word, different way the word is used. What's the, if we were to look at that, okay, so yeah, we set him before God and he gives us the peace of God. What's kind of the action here, right? Which transcends all understanding. Is that, I want to say, is that the important part of the verse? But that's not really what I mean. But that's the one that really might speak to us, right? When we have this interaction with God, as we've all talked about it here today, have you ever had the peace and you just don't understand how you're able to have it?
It's a gift.
It's a gift, right? It's a gift from God, right? That no matter what it is, you end up being at what?
Peace.
Peace, mentally and emotionally, not just physically. You might not be, out, a physical peace like that. Like we talked about the wars or the confrontations. We're talking about an internal peace.
I'll confess, I'm not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
As far as that.
At peace?
I haven't matured yet in the faith to where I can just lay it at God's feet and walk away from it.
Mm-hmm. It's extremely hard to do. I think I said last week that I've talked many times with people that we're really good, I think, of coming before the cross. We're really good at kneeling at the cross. We're really good at praying to God and laying our backpack full of crap right there at the foot of the cross. But when we get up, we do what? We pick it up and take it with us. Right? Because I got this, God. I got to thank you for the momentary peace that you offered me, that you blessed me with, that was a gift to me. But I got it. I can take care of it, because as a creation, we like to control things and we like to be in charge. I think we don't like to think somebody else might be in charge or caring for us in a way like that. And so how do we leave that at the foot of the cross, right? How do we let it be? People are like, how do we let it go? Let it go. Right? How do we let it go? How do we let that go and let go and let God, right? There was some phrasing used about that a few years ago. Let go and let God do that, right? Is letting God take that, letting God kind of settle that. Even if it doesn't solve the problem may not go away. There are going to be some things that we really are not able to rectify. There are several writers within family counseling that say, a good 80 to 90% of conflicts in your relationships are not going to be resolvable. You have to learn how to what? Say again?
I said let go.
Let go? Right, you learn to compromise. Look, we got to find a way, because did you know you can both be right in any given situation? You're just right in different ways. So we have to learn to do what? Turn towards and compromise. It's a good Gottman concept right there. Right? So it's, when you look at it, We have to learn to work with each other, right? We learn to know that not everything is going to be solved. This is not saying God is going to solve your problem. That as soon as you bring it before God, the problem is going to go away. What does it say?
He'll give you a peace.
He'll give you a peace. He'll give you a calmness. He'll give you maybe an understanding or a way to just say, you know what? No matter what happens, it's all going to be okay. I think that would be the part of it which transcends the understanding, because how can I be okay after all of which has occurred, whatever the situation happens to be it an illness, be it a loss, be it a physical problem, be it a thing with jobs or family or whatever it happens to be, how can I be okay? People will say, I've had people say many times, I will never be okay again. Nothing is ever going to be right again because X, Y, or Z has occurred. Is that reality?
Well, some things may not be what you thought they were going to be
Yes.
because X, Y, and Z happened.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean A, B, and C won't be happening over here just
Mhm.
because you thought this was what you were going to
Mm-hmm.
wanted things to turn out.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you go to Sweden instead of Switzerland, you know?
Yeah. Get on the wrong plane, end up in the wrong place. But that is, I think that's the argument, is regardless of whether the problem is solved or the problem has gone away or that everything has come to some kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Rectification? Is that even a word? I'm Daniel, I'm making up words today. Right? God is able to give us this peace. Now, we don't even understand how we get that peace. We don't understand how we get to that point. Right? And so what does he say? And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in what? What's that mean? See, because with the comma, you could take this out. I think it would change, but you could take this out, and it says, and the peace of God will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. What does that mean? How will it guard our hearts and our minds?
You're not there alone.
Yes. Right.
I think a lot of the time, the enemy will get to you through your anxieties, and your anxieties are what lead you to not trust the Lord. What if this happens? What if it doesn't go the way I want it to? And if you have that peace and that, which really stems from the trust that you have in Him, you will not worry as much, and you will not be as susceptible to thoughts that are not your own, that cause you to doubt.
Okay. Why is it in Christ Jesus?
Because that's where we're whole.
Say again.
That's where we are whole.
That's where we are whole. Right? That is our way to God, is it not? Through Jesus. It's our way to the Father. Right? The peace of God will protect us. It will guard us. It will take care of us. It will watch over us. It will help settle us. Right? Not just our hearts, but also our minds. You ever had a heartache you can't quite explain? You ever have a heartache, you have trouble getting rid of the pain of whatever that heartache is? Be it hurt? Right? There's a book out there called The Bait of Satan that was probably written about where am I from? Probably written 25 years ago, and it talks about one of the greatest challenges to a Christian is the sin of offense. We get offended by things. We get offended in our hearts. We get offended in our minds. We are offended, and then that causes all these other problems. We get offended by things. I am so offended by what they said. I'm so offended by what they did. I'm so offended by whatever their actions are. And then that creates a little envelope inside of our hearts, a little spot that who is able to get to us? Satan gives foothold in our hearts and in our minds, because then we start chewing on that.
What's the difference between the heart and the mind? Why did he put it that way?
I don't know. What do you think?
I ask you first.
Well, does that tell us?
You're the specialist. I do numbers.
You do numbers, I do thoughts, right? Well, argumentatively, is there a difference between our hearts and our minds? Logically, that would be based in our mind, would it not? We can logically work through something, but our heart will not allow us to do what?
That's accounts with mind.
We feel it.
Yes.
In a sense.
How often does our heart get us in trouble? Sometimes we have to go with what our hearts, because our mind is logicking us to death. Well, this is a bad choice. This is a bad idea. You shouldn't do this. You don't want to do that. Your brain is telling you, I'm not a huge fan on foreign mission work. That's not that it's a bad thing. It's just that's not my calling, right? But it is something that I'm not necessarily comfortable with. And so my mind is up here saying, you don't want to do this. 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 But then your heart says what? I want to get out there. I want to do this thing. I want to help these people. You might walk into a crowd of people because your heart drives you to want to serve people and want to help them. But it's an area that logically your mind is telling you that is a bad option for you. That is not the place you should go. Your brain is warning you, danger, 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 danger. But your heart does what? Drives you to get into it. Within this, Paul is saying, and God through Paul is saying, that these two things are different. They function differently. They move us differently. They convict us differently. And he can protect what? Both of them. So my heart might get hurt, but logically I can understand why it's happening. But my heart is still burning and still yearning. It's still in pain. My heart might say, this is the greatest thing ever, but my brain's going, that is a really bad choice. What do we do with that? God's saying he is able to take care of what? All of it. But it's for those who are aware. What is one of the caveats of all of this?
Steadfast in God.
Say again?
Steadfast in God.
Steadfast in God. Steadfast in him.
Isaiah acknowledges in chapter 26, he's saying that we're going to suffer just like the rest of the world. But it says God puts his peace on those who are steadfast. So it's kind of like an analogy for idle hands. You're focused on God all the time. You don't have time to focus on the stuff that's going to make you work.
Good example of this, heart and mind. Jesus' prayer before his crucifixion. Where he's, I know this is going to hurt, this is going to be a burden. God, if you can, remove this from me, but you will. And I think that's his heart. I think his heart was heavier because of what he was going to have, our sins that he was carrying. It was the physical part of it. But his mind, he was also afraid what the mind would put him through before the crucifixion and during the crucifixion. I think that's where he knew that what was coming was there, and his heart was, I've got to do this, but God, if there's any way. And I think that's where the heart and mind, you see two different things there. So.
Well, we see that as an example for Jesus going before the Father and doing this very thing. We're told to do it through Jesus, but Jesus went to the Father and by prayer and petition, thanksgiving. But what did he say? Your will be done. I would argue that the physical, his logical side, his brain was telling him, this is what you have to do. This is the direction you have to go. There's no other option. But what's he afraid of? What do you think Jesus was concerned about in the garden?
The pain.
He knew what he was about to experience physically. He knew what that physical body that he had inhabited was going to experience. And what did he do? He requested of the Father peace. That's what he called on the Father for. You know, if any other way I can get out of doing this, how many of you would really want to do that? I think there are some great examples of the human side of Christ that comes through during his ministry. 100% human, 100% divine, but you see that human side pop up every now and then. I would not want to go through what he was about to go through.
You wouldn't have survived it, only he could survive scourging and all of that.
Most of them, what is it they say? What, 75 to 80% of those that were scourged died before they even made it to the crucifixion? Because the blood loss was so great that they would die before they got there. That's how bad that was. Then they had to carry that cross, or whichever, the beam or whatever it is that they had to carry up there, carry it up to the actual crucifixion site. So not only are they doing this, but then they strap this rough-hewn board against their back, and they got to drag it up there to be crucified. They take their own method of crucifixion up there with them. Awful. What else on Philippians 4, 6 through 7? We've been on that one. This is our second week. You know, I can stay here forever.
A Christian counselor at Lexington, I had him in a class. The class is not going to be in agreement with what this man taught, but he said he'd counseled hundreds of Christian couples, some of them involved in adultery. And he said, I tell the innocent party, if y'all are going to try to give it a second go, when you forgive him, don't forgive him unless you're not going to bring it up again. Don't keep throwing it up in his face. I don't know how you feel about that, but I think that's where one of the real tests are, is or whatever.
Tests of what?
Real forgiveness.
Okay.
How do you get there from peace?
That's what I'm trying to get. How does that relate to? Is that putting yourself at peace through forgiveness?
I don't know. I should have kept my mouth shut.
Reasonable thought. But anyway, we'll move on. All right. So, which way are we going? All right. Second set, there are several different examples set within this concept of peace. The next one is Romans 12, verse 18. If it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men.
But it starts with the word if.
If it is possible. Well, that's an interesting thought. It's a very interesting thought. If. What does that allude to?
Sometimes it's not.
Sometimes it's not.
Well, it's not in our control.
It's not in our control.
For them.
Right.
It's in our control to control ourselves.
What's our goal? Right? If there is a problem,
Go to him and work it out.
suck it up, move on, right? But if there's a problem, our idea is to try to find, if this is the problem, our goal is to try to find any possible way around the problem. Try to talk it out. I heard it said one time they were interviewing boxers or fighters, these people that would do street fighting, all these different things. And they said, what would be your greatest bit of advice to winning a fight, a disagreement, a conflict of any kind? And almost all of them said the same thing. Don't be there. And what they were saying was, be able to talk yourself out of the fight. Be able to not go to blows. Being able to avoid the actual conflict, right? Paul is telling us, God's telling us through Paul, right? If it is possible, if the situation if it's capable for you to do it, as much as depends on you, I think that goes back to that concept that it's not always up to us, but what is our goal? To be as peaceful as possible. Jesus, how many times did Jesus avoid a conflict? But there were a couple of times he did what?
He got with the program and drove them out of the.
Say again?
Flip tables and whip people.
Oh, yeah, flip tables and whip it. They use that today. They say, Jesus flipped tables, right? So sometimes it's right. Now, why did Jesus get angry? I'm clapping like I'm a 14-year-old girl, right? Why did Jesus get angry? When you sit and you think about Jesus in anger, what made Jesus angry? Yelling at him? No. Attempting to kill him? Say again? Unrighteousness. Anything that went against who? The Father, right? God the Father.
and he hated seeing that done in God's house.
That was the only time you really ever saw Jesus get angry with people. He got after his own disciples, right? He turns around to the mass and throng, the word throng, they use the word throng, of people that were behind him and says, if you're going to follow me, you got to eat of my flesh and drink of my blood. And the people went, oh, I got to go. And so a whole bunch of them left. And Peter comes up and says, you can't be saying that stuff because we're trying to build an army. And what did Jesus say to him? Get behind me. Get thee behind me, Satan. Right? If we use King James Version, right? It says, get behind me, Satan. Right? Peter was not understanding his purpose, was not understanding why he's there. He got irritated with him when he was out with James and John. And he says, should we call down fire like Elijah did and burn up this town because of their disrespect to me? He got on to him. No, that's not what we're going to do. Then he named them what?
The Sons of Thunder.
The Sons of Thunder, because they were so willing to do what? To fight. Right? What is our greatest strength as Christians when it comes to conflict? Being a peacemaker. Romans. He has spent Romans telling the people, the Jews specifically in Rome, why the Jewish faith has been fulfilled, why it is no longer necessary, why the laws and all of that are no longer necessary, that you now just need Jesus. Then he gets to this, because what does he know is going to happen? Conflict. You're going to run into conflict. Your job as a follower of Christ is to do as much as you can, if it is possible, that you can control it. You are to live peaceably. Why would he be telling the Jews, specifically the Jews, that? What does the Jewish nation have a tendency to do? Why was Roman occupation a military occupation of Jerusalem? Because they have a tendency to do what? To fight. They rise up. Right just underneath Pilate, there had been what? 3 insurrections against the Romans at that point? And they were expecting a 4th? One of the reasons Pilate did what he did was because he didn't, if he had another one, they were going to put him to death and bring in a new ruler to that area. The Jewish people were known to be fighters. They wanted to stand up, they wanted to brawl, they wanted to fight against oppression as they felt it was. He's talking to generally the Jews who had become Christians. So, Jewish descent, Christians by choice, they have a tendency to want to fight.
They tend to do that.
Yeah, well, you don't change the people very much, right?
Israel's been fighting all the time.
Well, they're always been in battle of some sort. They're always
Since
contentious.
the beginning of time, they've always fought.
So what's he telling them? These specific people, specifically Jewish now Christians, listen, your goal is to live what? Peaceably. Right? How does that go back to that fruit of the Spirit? Love, joy, peace. Because it's not just a mental, emotional, but it's also a physical. Then we have the moment where he says, trade your cloak for a sword. You know, because every now and then you're going to have to stand up. You're going to have to fight. It will not, this alludes to if it is possible, meaning it will not always be possible to live at peace with one another. But what should be our number one goal?
Peace.
Why?
Conserves energy.
That's a well thought out comment, right? It conserves energy, because if you use all your energy being mad and angry and fighting with people, what do you don't have energy to do?
Well,
Serve.
it's a direct commandment.
It's a drive, it's a commandment, but this goes back to the very first of the fruits of love. Love your neighbor as yourself. The second commandment, right? Love God, love your neighbor, right? If I love my neighbor, my goal will be to live at what with them?
Peaceable.
Did you know living at peace sometimes means you acquiesce? Sometimes it means you don't. Living at peace sometimes means you accept even if you're not wrong, you might accept, I'm going to use the term defeat, but that's not the right word. But you might accept it. You know what? I'm just going to step back, right? One of the things is I'm going to take a step down in engaging with this person. I don't have to be their better. I don't have to be their equal. I'm going to take a step down because that's the way I'm going to reach them. And once I'm able to break through the ice that they have, and we are living a little bit more peacefully, then I can engage with them. If you are a rabble rouser, if we were to go back to contentious, right? Outbursts, right? Dissensions, rivalries or revelries, right? All of those, several of those things relate to this one specifically. If we are a brawler and a contentious person and an angry person, how can we possibly spread faith and share our faith with somebody else?
I think it's worth mentioning too.
Mm-hmm.
If you back up one, verse 17.
Uh-huh.
It says, make sure not to repay evil with evil,
Mm-hmm.
and to make sure that you're doing what's right in the eyes of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So tying those two together, it's saying you've got people that aren't saved that are watching how you act.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure you're living peacefully with everybody because you're being watched. How are you representing God?
I use that example with parents when I'm working with parents, that you are always the adultier adult in the room. I don't care how old your children get. You are always the bigger adult. You're always the older adult. Does that mean you're always right? No. But that means you have an expectation to set what? An example. It might cause you frustration. It might cause you pain. It might irritate you. But your job is to set the example. Same thing with other Christians. You have no idea who's watching. You don't have any idea who's going to hear. Because if something good happens, it's been shown that people will tell one or two people. But if something bad happens, how many do they tell?
It's on Facebook.
It's everywhere, right? In the retail environment, a good experience, a person will tell one or two people. A bad experience, they'll tell at least a minimum of 10 other people. And social media has made it much simpler to disseminate the negativity. They rarely disseminate the positive, but they very much disseminate the negative. I'm in this story, and this little girl was rude to me. Yeah. Not just a girl, the worker.
One of the Beatitudes is blessed are the peacemakers. But coming in a close second, when the police come upon a situation and there's people arguing, the first thing they try to do is de-escalate.
Mm-hmm.
So blessed are also the de-escalators.
Well, that would be a peacemaker, right?
Especially for Christians involved.
How do they do it?
Separation.
They separate them. What? That's a great example in the context of de-escalation. It's a good idea to what? Go away, right? To separate, to draw apart. They take this one over here and this one over here, two different people talking to two different people, say, hey, tell me what happened, and this one goes over there, and hey, tell me what happened, and they come back together and they talk about what happened. Sometimes you have to do what? Did you have something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you mentioned.
You raised your hand, but
Yeah, well, I wasn't sure if you were just like waiting. I didn't know what that meant. No, sometimes you just have to. Sometimes there is no agreement. You may just have to leave each other alone permanently, and you're just not going to be able to work through it. So the peacefulness would just be away from each other.
Hey, Andy, I keep thinking about that Louisiana preacher that I guess
beat up the dude across the street from the church?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be tempted to do the same
Yes.
thing.
What do you do?
The
Beat up the
preacher
dude
went
across
across
the
the street and got in this guy's eyes, threw him to the ground.
He pounded on that dude like there was no tomorrow. That had no self-control. None. He had zero self-control.
Well, I mean,
Right.
the guy had
Yeah.
threatened to rape his wife, rape his grandchildren. They catcalled all the people going in and out of the church. It wasn't an isolated incident.
Right.
Apparently, it had been going on for a while,
And the police wouldn't respond to it because they were friends with them.
Huh?
And the police wouldn't respond because they were friends with the perpetrator.
Hopefully somebody videoed.
That's a
Oh,
whole
they did video.
week's worth of classes, Alan, right there. I could do. Listen, let me tell you what. Sticks and stones. Yes, words can make you angry. Sticks and stones, they break my bones, but words. We have taken words and made them powerful.
Jiggly has a saying that you don't have to go to every fight that you're invited to.
Yeah, I tell my students, you don't have to attend every fight you're invited to. I'm not saying they listen, they don't really, but I feel like it's really honest.
If it is possible, as much as it depends on who.
On you.
I don't have to go confront that person. I don't have to accept their confrontation. Right,
Just
what-
because they say something doesn't make it true, so you don't have to prove them false.
You know how often I use that with people in the counseling session? Well, they're saying all these things. Are they true? If they're true, you need to fix it. Otherwise, who cares what they say? Because your actions are going to do what? If they say you were doing this, and this, but nobody else on the planet ever sees it, where's the reality of it? What are people watching? Your words or your actions? This guy at this church will never be successful in what he's doing again because he blew it.
Oh, they said his church was overwhelming
Yeah.
with attendance the next day.
Overflowing.
It's not going to last.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you right now. It's not. Because what did he prove?
He was
There's
so
a limit
rid
to
of
it.
any BS.
Violence is the answer. That's
What'd you say?
That it's human like everybody else.
Huh?
Right.
There's a
Yeah.
limit to his patience.
Limit to his patience. What else?
Violence is his answer.
Violence is the answer.
Or that he's going to protect his daughter-in-law.
He went across the road.
He approached him. That's the problem.
He didn't do it on church grounds, what I'm saying.
Yes. If this guy would have been on their property and would have been doing it, it might have been different.
Now he's got a big old fence on it.
You know, it's a disaster. But what did he make? If you were going to label him within the confines of Christianity, what did all of that just say about Christians? You can push us far enough, hypocrites. You can push us far enough. If you say just the right thing, we will throw this Jesus thing out the window and we will beat you till you can't see straight. Did you know it makes all of us look bad? Now, as fathers and husbands, we can say, I understand what he did. Does that make it okay? He was in no way living peaceably. He crossed the street. He did. That guy was not at his house. That guy was not on his property. He crossed the street to get to him. That was not living peacefully. It was on him. You might disagree with that, but reality of it is he escalated that moment, and he should not have. He should not have. And his coffee.
Am I the only one that admires that guy for standing up to a bully,
Well, I think
even
what
though
he-
he crossed the street?
Well, I think what it is, depends on what he did. If people came and it was the biggest attendance, if you sit there and humbly admit what I did was wrong,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I think people understand that's human.
Has he said that?
Oh, I don't know.
I felt like the press conference he held afterwards was very, I felt like it was very well. I felt like he did a great
Well,
job
we're-
expressing what had happened, how this torment had been going on for months and months and months. There had been multiple applications with the police where they were explaining what happened, but the police, of course, were friends with them. And sometimes that happens when you're friends with the police. You can do things that other people can't. I felt like that he owned it, that his anger perhaps shouldn't have been done, but at the same time, like he has to protect the women and his family. I felt like we're called to do that as a man. I feel like if you don't do that, then you're wrong. He does leave town quite often. The threat was when you leave town, I will rape and kill your family. I mean, I feel like had he not done that, and that had happened, oh my goodness, what Christian would not be against him? Like I don't know. And that's just my opinion. I do feel like that we're called to take care of our family and especially our men. I think when you're talking about crossing the street, that time, perhaps he should have waited for the next time when the guy came onto the property, because he had. So I guess he should have waited when he came back on, but that would have
Well,
been his
in her
mistake.
video
crossing the
here,
road.
in her video here, the preacher crosses the street, sure.
Right.
But the other guy is the one who starts throwing the first punches.
True.
So, I mean, I admire somebody who stands up and says, "You are not gonna hurt my family."
Let's hope
Because
it,
I'm enough she-bear that I would have probably taken a tire
I
iron
think
hit.
sometimes it's a righteous fight.
Yeah. So,
Back to this, so Paul, made it clear that living peacefully with everybody doesn't necessarily mean you still have to be around them. He was completely against John Mark going with a many more because of what he had already done. So sometimes living peaceably with people or avoiding them to keep that peace.
going down the way.
I got y'all heated up. I got y'all heated up. All right, everybody, we will call to a close today. We will pick up next week. We'll do this. Blessed are the peacemakers, and you can yell at me some more next week. And then we'll move into Colossians, Ephesians, and then we'll move into long suffering and patience, which might feed right into this. Thank you all for your comments. Thank you for your time. We will see you next time.